If you really want to test how your moods are, how your thinking is, and the related behaviors, is take 10 minutes in the morning and ask yourself, what's my intention for today? Who do I want to be? Through adopting practices of self-coaching, it requires us to slow down. It requires us to stop and pause and notice ourselves and see ourselves as a third person would see us. It's bringing empathy to understand their needs, trying to stand as best you can in their shoes. It's bringing compassion to also recognize that it's a challenge that they're working through and just a supportive landscape for them.
What one key piece of advice would you like to give to all the entrepreneurs watching and listening today?
Rather than feeling that you're alone and you've got to go it alone, I'd start thinking about what are the communities that you could become a part of, whether they're coaching communities or maybe it's industry communities or business communities, and how do you participate in those, and how do you bring your voice into it?
Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Business Growth Show. I'm your host, Athin Cassiotis, and today I have an awesome guest. His name is Karen Steyn, and she's an executive coach, keynote speaker, menopause champion, and leadership workshop facilitator. She is the multi-award-winning author of Be Your Own Leadership Coach and brings over 30 years of experience in professional services, including 24 years as a partner at Deloitte. And with more than 2,500 coaching hours, Karen supports leaders in developing self-coaching practices to enhance their leadership impact. She's passionate about women's sustainable careers. She designed and delivered Deloitte's Women Partner Coaching Program and co-leads their Managing Menopause in the Workplace working group, helping Deloitte become the first Australian company accredited as a menopause-friendly employer. And Karen has since been appointed as an independent panel member, assessing organizations towards their accreditations. As a group coaching for managing menopause in the workplace, Karen supports organizations by empowering their workforce to be their best selves through menopause. She's currently writing a second book in support of the same. Welcome, Karen, and thank you for being on the Business Growth Show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm sure it's going to be a great show for everyone watching and listening today. And you are a successful entrepreneur. So yeah, for those people who don't know who you are, please introduce yourself by telling us a bit more about you and your journey.
Well, thank you. And you read out quite a bit of detail there, so I guess it's nice to summarize it all. I've had a long-standing career in professional services. As you said, I was a partner of Deloitte for some 24 years. For 16 years, I was a partner in the tax business and on the tax executive. So I was supporting organisations with seeking funding for research and development incentives in Australia. Very purposeful. But I had a bit of a change of tact in 2016. I had just completed a Masters of Science in Coaching Psychology. I felt I wanted to come back to helping individuals rather than necessarily helping corporates as I was doing in the tax area. And I suggested to the CEO and COO at the time that perhaps I should leave tax and roll out a program I'd designed, which was to be an executive coach to our women leaders across Australia and Deloitte. And thankfully, they said yes. And in 2016, I left the tax practice, stepped into what was then executive development, became the talent partner practice. And I used to coach probably around 80 to 100 women leaders each year, very much purposely trying to assist them with having sustainable long-term careers. And then as my journey continued, I became conscious that as a coach, I was helping the people who were privileged to be sitting opposite one-on-one, maybe on Zoom, maybe in the room. But I felt that there was a whole body of people who perhaps didn't logistically have access to a coach, or maybe financially couldn't access a coach. So I wrote my book, Be Your Own Leadership Coach, Self-Coaching Strategies to Lead Your Way. And the intention was to increase the equity of access to coaching strategies so many more people could work out how they could be of their best, how they could be their best selves and have the leadership impact they wanted to. So the book came out in 2023. The following year, last year, I left the partnership in May 24, and the next day became a consultant to Deloitte. So I continue to do executive coaching with them and leadership work, but I've been spending my time activating the book and working with other organisations, other individuals, running my own business, a big change from being in a partnership to now being self-sustained as a business owner, and also very much assisting corporates and individuals with managing menopause in the workplace. So a huge passion of mine and where I'm very much leaning very heavily into in terms of my business route and supporting many more people so they could also build out self-coaching strategies to work out how they can get through the transition of menopause.
Yeah.
That leads me to today.
I love it. Amazing story there, and great to hear the background and how it's all shifted now and smart. I see that a lot with people leaving organizations, getting coming back as a consultant technically, right? While you're doing other things, you've got relationships there as well as building your business in a lot of other different ways and making more of an impact, right? Instead of in one organization, to many more and people across the world and stuff. So love that. Really, really powerful. And I love the topic of self-coaching here. Because I'm sure with you, you've done a lot of accreditations. I've done NLP master practitioner training, right? So it's
Yeah.
great to be able to help people, guide them through. And I always like to use the analogy of like teaching people how to fish, right? So then that way they can do it themselves to some extent. So
Yeah.
yeah, tell us more around self-coaching to be your best self.
Well, I think it's such an important concept because too often people become too busy and then therefore too reliant on the system they're in to sort things out for them. And so they lose touch or lose sight of the impact that they're having and their ability to make choices towards what's in their control and maybe step forward or have a different impact to the one that they're having. But because they get so busy, they get wound up in what's happening to them, and often it becomes a focus on more of a blame mentality, lack of responsibility, lack of accountability, yet they still feel they want to succeed. They want the very best. They're trying hard, but they're not recognizing that they have much more of a greater ability to help themselves to be their best or better selves. So, through adopting practices of self-coaching, we can actually learn the process of self-coaching. And it requires us to slow down. It requires us to stop and pause and notice ourselves and see ourselves as a third person would see us. So, very much standing outside of yourself and objectively looking back to notice what are the behaviors, the emotions, and the cognitions that you're witnessing, and how are they helping you and moving you towards where you'd like to be, or maybe they're hindering you and pushing you away. And it's at that point you can stop through self-coaching and make some active choices. Now, do I choose to go with what's helping me? Maybe I'll dial that up or focus more energy there. Or do I choose to make some better choices? And it could be as much as what am I listening to in terms of the stories I'm telling myself? Are those helping or hindering me? Do I make the choice to continue to feed that, or do I actually make a choice to start to test my assumptions, to get more data, to seek more feedback, to get a broader perspective to better understand what's happening to me in the system I'm a part of? And therefore, I can make better choices towards where I'd like to get to. So it's really empowering. If we actually take a hold of self-coaching, we start to build our confidence because we start to know much more of what we're capable of. We know who we are, we know our values, our beliefs, we understand our purpose and our strengths, so we can activate those, and our confidence starts to boost. And when we're much more confident, we're more engaged, our productivity is higher, we're optimistic, our well-being improves. We also have much more foresight, and this is probably my favorite of self-coaching because how often do you hear people say, "Oh, if only I'd realized," it's a if only hindsight, I didn't have to wait for hindsight to tell me that this would happen. And with self-coaching, we have so much more foresight because we can start to anticipate how responsive we are in certain situations or how we trigger ourselves in other situations. And with that foresight, we can make those choices again to either lean in and to continue or just to slow down and stop and take a different path. So I love the ability to be able to pave your own way in a much clearer path than working through all the muddiness of it and finding out if I got to the right place in the end. And it's also really helpful too in terms of being able to find the objective of where you want to get to. So I find as a coach, there are many occasions when people rock up to their coaching conversation and it's like, right, so what are we going to talk about today? And I have to remind them that they're not coaching for my benefit, but they're coaching for theirs. So the more that they're actually working their way through the magic in between the sessions, where the spaces in between, that's really where the magic's happening because people are taking active steps towards change. Then when they come back to me, we'll have much more nuanced conversations. But if they're really reliant on the coach sorting it out for them, that's when they're going to start feeling frustrated or feeling like maybe coaching's just not for me because nothing's happened. And the magic is not from the coach kind of dusting some nice sprinkles on top. It's actually what you're doing with your own thinking, your own behaviors, and your own emotions in those spaces to try and feel different, think differently, or act differently.
Yeah, I love that. So true. And I find it with myself, same with the clients, the ones that come prepared. And, I try and say, maybe the day before, even like obviously write some
Yeah.
notes, maybe leading up to the session, however often you're doing a session, but maybe even the day before, just do a bit of a brain dump, like what's going on, what do I need
Yeah.
to work on? So you come prepared, right, to the session. All of a sudden, you really get deep, right, into creating some change, for them. Yeah, much more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, the only time I'd suggest that they can come without that is when they're struggling with how do they affect change? How do I motivate myself? So if that's something that they require assistance with, to say, look, I realize, and that's the self-awareness too, I realize my motivation is really low and I can't click it through. I can't make any change. Can you help me with some coaching around that? That's completely relevant and a part of your journey. But if it's simply that they've just not paid attention to it, and then they're stepping in hoping that we'll motivate them through the conversation, and then they'll come back again and feel motivated again, they'll still have those peaks and troughs of high motivation, no change, having to build up their motivation in a coaching session to lead to no change, and they'll start to see a pattern. And it's, I guess, as a coach, that's our duty, is to help them notice the pattern so they can make better use of the coaching sessions. And by activating their own self-coaching in between, they become less reliant on hoping the coach will affect change, hoping the coach will be the one who allows them to have that leadership impact, because it's really not on the coach to do that at all. We're just holding a space for them of no judgment, where they can actually have a collaborative conversation with us to try and help work through what's happening for them, to build solutions, to make some plans, to think of some actions. But the coach is not doing anything other than asking some questions to change or alter their perspectives or bring things to their attention. They're the ones who have to then make the choice to act on it to affect the change. It's really, I find it really, really interesting and very noticeable when you do have people who, as you said, have prepared or thought through it, and who are using coaching to advance themselves, and those who are using coaching because they think it will fix it. Two very different mindsets.
Yeah, definitely. And it shows the difference between coaching and mentoring, right? What you're talking about here,
Yes.
where coaching is just asking great questions and leading, someone to a particular point where they can make that decision, whereas a mentor is sort of telling them, right, from experience, things like that. So it's a very, very different, area there of working with people. And I think one thing that I see with people, I think mindset's the most important thing, right? In whatever you're
Mm.
doing, because it doesn't matter your
Yes.
skills or whatever like that. The mindset will hold you back or lift you up, like you've been telling us here today. Do you want to maybe give something a little bit more practical around, a lot of people get negative thoughts, right? In their
Yeah.
mind. It's pretty
Yeah.
normal, let's call it. So if something like this pops up for someone, what's maybe a little bit of a process or something that someone can go through so they can
Yes.
help to get out of that and change that story, as you were saying?
Yes. I think the first thing is to realize it doesn't always have to be so hard. And I'm talking about the frame outside of somebody who is not mentally well, who needs actual support from a psychologist or psychiatrist. I'm talking about mainstream thinking, because all of us have the ebbs and flows of different types of thinking and emotions every day. It's very normal. But it's whether we lean into those stories and let that set us up for the day, and then allow everything to happen because of those thoughts, or otherwise. So if we're looking at what happens, the first thing is to actively become closer to understanding yourself by noticing more of yourself. And so we need to make space to actually stop and reflect. If I'm not reflecting, I'll just be in a mood, and that mood will direct me and carry me wherever it wants to take me. And I'll suddenly see the impact of that mood when I've snapped at somebody, or I've been really frustrated or really short. And then I'm noticing people aren't really want to engage with me, or maybe they're not inviting me to that group meeting, or maybe I haven't been asked to, collaborate on an opportunity because perhaps the experience that someone's having with me isn't ideal. So if I make space to reflect, and my suggestion is take 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening to understand whether your intention for the day is matching the impact you're having. So if you really want to test how your moods are, how your thinking is, and the related behaviors, is take 10 minutes in the morning and ask yourself, what's my intention for today? Who do I want to be? And that's really different to what do I want to do? So, what I want to do is my task list, all the things I'm going to write down for the day. Who I want to be is the impact I want to have, the type of leader I want to be. And I believe everybody is a leader, regardless of title. We all have opportunities to make leadership decisions about what attitude I'll bring, or how I'll communicate, or how I'll demonstrate and role model how I'll participate in a session or otherwise. So we're all leaders. So if I think about who do I want to be today, I can then become much more cognizant of what are the behaviors, the emotions, and the cognitions that I need to allow me to be that leader. And if I notice that I'm feeling pretty grouchy and grumpy, I have to ask myself the question if that's going to help me be who I want to be. Now, if it is, go for it. I'd suggest it's probably not. So if it's not, then I'd actually start thinking, well, what are some of the strategies I can employ that could help me regulate my mood? And it could simply be that I want to express some gratitude. I want to actually ground myself to understand where I am and where I'm at and what I have and what I'm grateful for. And that can start to alter my positive mindset or move me towards more of a positive mindset. Or maybe it's expressing gratitude to other people because we know that when we express gratitude, it makes us feel more positively minded, but it also makes the other people around us the same. So there's this instant ripple effect of doing so. And it could even be just putting music on and listening to your favorite soundtrack to kind of change your biorhythms and feel differently, because that can affect your mood too. So there's a whole bunch of strategies. And in fact, I talk about a lot of these in my book. So by activating what you need to do, you can then go into your day and start to, hold yourself and take small breaks during the day again to reflect for a few minutes. Am I still where I need to be in order to be who I want to be? And at the end of the day, on maybe your commute home, take 10 minutes and ask yourself a slightly different question. Ask yourself the question of whether I had the impact that I wanted to have. Did my impact match my intention? And if it did, again, roll it over to the next day and continue. But if it didn't, that's when you get to make some more choices as to, well, what do I need to do differently and why did it falter? So if I started to lift my mood and by the end of the day I realized I'd come down again, what was it that brought me back down? Was it that I had back-to-back meetings for the afternoon and I had no space to self-regulate, no spaces in between for my well-being to actually, recalibrate, maybe step away, get a glass of water or a coffee or step outside for 5 minutes? So what was it that caused the frustration that continued to ripple into the next and the next meeting, which by the end of the day made me grouchy again? And what could I do differently? And that's where your leadership impact comes in, because we all have capacity to affect change. So even if you're not hosting the meetings, you could ask the question, would it be okay if we tried to put some well-being breaks in our schedules? Because all of us need to have time away from our desk. All of us need bathroom breaks. All of us need time to stretch, to recalibrate, to hydrate, to deal with nutrition. So just because you're not owning the meeting doesn't mean you can't be suggestive of what would be in everybody's best interest and hope that that other individual also sees the sense making that you're offering there. So there's some choices and really stopping, looking at intention, looking at impact and bringing them together each day.
Yeah, I love that intention impact element there. And those breaks, I do like to walk outside and take my shoes off and ground on the grass,
Oh, nice.
outside
No.
in between
Yeah.
meetings. And it helps, especially when you're pushing a little bit, right? If you've got a lot of those meetings and stuff. So I think it's definitely important. And one thing I learned from someone as well is that an emotion, technically, you only feel it chemically in the body for about 2 minutes maximum, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you're feeling longer than that, then that's a story, right? That's replaying
Mm.
in you
Mm.
and it's not
Yeah.
actually serving you in that way.
100%. 100%. And often the stories are based on the assumptions that we're holding. And I always ask my coaches, well, what's the data points that you have that you're using to test those assumptions about? Do you need to go and collect some more data? Because maybe you have no data at all. Maybe you've just assumed that people feel this way towards me, or they think I'm not good enough, or they didn't ask me because of X, Y, and Z. And so actually seeking some data, going in seeking some feedback, asking questions, being curious in a positive way. So I like to call it healthy skepticism, asking questions so you can test the assumptions you're holding and maybe flit away the agendas that you assumed people had or the motives that they had. Most of the time, we'll find that when we've got the data, it's a completely different perspective. So if we can test our assumptions and push open our cognitive boundaries, we're able to see so much more. And when we see so much more, we can then observe and intake in a very different way. And I'd suggest that in many cases, the stories we're telling ourselves won't be true. So if we can recognize who are the people we can go and seek insight from, seek feedback, how am I doing it in a way which allows them to give me feedback with a framework that's helpful? And so I often suggest people could just say, well, if it's actually just asking for feedback about performance, tell me about what worked well and what you observed of me, and how could I make it even better? And what would be an example of that? And what were the behaviors you noticed that had the impact you were thinking would be helpful? What would be different behaviors to lead to a better impact? Rather than just being told, no, everything's fine. It's good, you're good. Keep doing what you're doing. Because to my mind, that's not feedback. So you really want to get in there with your shovel and kind of mine the feedback and really dig it out until you get down to the gold. And often that's really deep down. But once you get there, you've got this lovely gem that you can hold on to that's going to, really assist you with correcting some of those stories.
Yeah, love that. So powerful. And one thing that came to mind with me is around like in business, I'm quite good at, I guess, being quite good, let's call it regulating whatever when I'm around other people, right? So I don't
Yeah.
necessarily, act out emotionally, let's call it, right? When I'm there. However, with my wife at home,
Uh-huh.
which has, generally there's tension in a relationship anyway, that's normal, right? That's where,
Yeah.
some of it can come out more, right? Because I guess the guard is down a little bit more and, we're very conscious people anyway. So it's like, we understand that and we allow each other to regulate and everything else. And we talk through it. But I think that's where maybe it's not in the business all the time, right? It could be something at home, which could then be affecting, right? Work in the business
100%.
as well. Yeah.
100%. And you want to think about, is that impact helpful? So is the fact that I've come home and I've ranted and I've carried on and I, haven't been helpful in our conversation, or it's been a tough conversation, did that help us move forward to a better place? Or has it actually created an obstacle or a barrier? And would there be a different way that I could have communicated, or a different way for me to discharge what I need to feel in terms of my stress, whether it is, as you said, going outside and grounding yourself, or going for a walk, or if you've come home from work, sitting in the garage for 5 minutes, just thinking through everything, putting some notes into your phone if you need to get rid of those extra thoughts, doing some breathing if need be, and walking inside the home with a fresh perspective rather than dragging everything from the day in with you to just offload it in there. Leave it in the garage. And then you can always pick it up the next day and deal with it the next day. But the more we, again, make some space, and it's the same if you had a meeting. If you're carrying frustrations from one meeting into the next, the people in that meeting are a bit confused as to why you're coming in with that attitude. I haven't done anything to create that. Why are you speaking to me that way? It causes a lot of confusion. It causes breakdown in terms of how we share information. So again, it's just thinking about, is that helping me or hindering me in the relationship I want to have, whether it's with a colleague or my partner at home or friends or whoever it might be.
Yeah, awesome. Love that. Let's talk about menopause now, right? Now,
Oh,
obviously I'm not a woman, but I understand it to an extent. And I think it's
right.
important, maybe for men. Let's talk about it from the men perspective here, right? Of just
Yeah.
understanding the changes that happen, right, in women, as they go through this. So do you want to just initially just explain, I guess, yeah, what it is and the
Sure.
changes that happen for a woman? Yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate you asking it and also asking for that perspective, because what has happened for years is it's been regarded as a taboo subject and spoken of in hushed tones. And so, from a community point of view, you wouldn't have had anyone on a podcast talking about these kind of things, especially around business issues. But what we're wanting to do is try and normalize the conversation. So, in years to come, this won't even be a topic that we'll be talking about. It'll just be so commonplace. So, menopause is actually one day in time. People think menopause goes for years. It's one day in time. It's 12 months from the end of a woman and some non-binary and transgendered person's last period, so their menstrual period. And the time leading up to that one day in time, where you almost get a virtual certificate saying, hooray, you've reached menopause, is what we call perimenopause. And perimenopause is the period of time in which your hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone start to fluctuate. So your fertile years, which were usually 20s, 30s, 40s, less or so, your hormones start to fluctuate, and as a result, the woman's menstrual cycle starts to change. So instead of being a monthly cycle, it starts to deviate to unexpected timeframes, to the point where you reach that one day in time, menopause, where the cycle has ended. So there's no more continuing of women having periods. Menopause comes from the Greek word menos, which means monthly, and pausus, which is the cessation. So it's the cessation of the monthly cycle. During the time of perimenopause, which can be on average from age 45 to 55 years of age, it might be that women are going through this for 4 to 10 years. And during that time, because of the spikes and the fluctuations in hormones, they may have some symptoms. And the symptoms can be quite bothersome and for some debilitating. And so these symptoms are not things that occur before working hours and after working hours. They actually will occur at all hours. They will occur at times when are unexpected. They're not permanently occurring. It could be sporadic. So somebody might, people would be familiar with the term hot flushes, where there's an intensity of body temperature, usually of the chest, neck, and face area. You might see a woman's face reddening. She might be sweating for some minutes. There's a sense of discomfort internally, and it's just quite an awkwardness. If that's seen, you're witnessing a woman have a hot flush. She can't control when it starts. She can't control when it stops. She can't say, I'll only have hot flushes outside of working hours. So because of the symptoms that happen, and because they can be quite debilitating, in fact, 80% of women who go through menopause will have symptoms. And so it's quite a large percentage of people who are dealing with bothersome to life-changing symptoms. It's important that we understand this in the workplace, because 50% of our population are women. And in Australia, 2.5 million women are of perimenopausal age, from 45 to 54 years of age, and 2 million of those women are in the workplace. So if we don't turn attention to the fact that here we have a group of women who have a great amount of wisdom and experience and knowledge and insight, and we want to have them remain in the workplace. We actually have a shortage of skills. We're having many more people who are making choices about whether they hold on to their roles whilst they're going through menopausal symptoms. If we don't attend to that and recognize that this is happening within the workplace, we're going to lose our fair share of women talent. And that's not a reasonable position to be in from a business point of view. And so it's not asking men to diagnose. It's not asking men to sit there and say, oh, I can see you're having a hot flush. I'm sorry to see that. It's just really asking men to be understanding of the fact that all women, and there are 4 billion women in the world, 1 million of them will be in perimenopause at any one time. All women will go through menopause. It's a life transition. For some, it'll be shorter than for others. When we've reached that day of menopause, the next day we refer to it as post-menopause. And for some women, they will still continue to have symptoms after that for a period of time, but perhaps to a lesser degree. So it's really about, as a leader, as a male leader, is simply understanding that this is something that my colleagues may be working through. If you recognize that perhaps they're not themselves, or perhaps their work isn't performed in the way that they regularly would, they might be fatigued, which is a symptom. Their concentration could be affected. They might have brain fog, where they're just not able to kind of grab onto the word. So they might be presenting and forget a word as they're doing so. And that might be kind of remarkable compared to who they would normally be. I would simply just be talking to them to say, hey, I've noticed you haven't been of yourself of late. Is there any support I can offer? And they might make a choice to actually say to you, well, actually, I'm working through menopause and my concentration's not as sharp as it used to be. And you might then start talking to them, well, let's talk about how we can solve for that. So it could move itself to a coaching conversation. But we're not asking you to go and ask them to take hormone replacement therapy or see a doctor or solve for that. It's more about making space to know, well, what's available in the workplace that could help them. So maybe there's a level of flexibility in the workplace. Maybe they could work from home. Some women have very erratic periods during menopause and unexpected flows. And so maybe they have soiled clothes and it's highly embarrassing for them. So just having access to clean bathrooms, or if they ask to work at home, if they've got terrible muscle cramps, or they're so fatigued, maybe they can take 30 minutes at home for a quick nap so they can re-energize and get back into their work. So it's bringing kindness in leadership. It's bringing empathy to understand their needs, trying to stand as best you can in their shoes. It's bringing compassion to also recognize that it's a challenge that they're working through, and just a supportive landscape for them. And that would be fabulous if men had an understanding that it's not about women trying to ask for anything more than just simply an understanding of what they're transitioning through.
Yeah.
I hope that's given you enough of a perspective as to what it's about. But there's lots of great apps around, and there's lots of easy things to read, and there's lots of books out there. And many of the apps also, and also the reading and the videos and podcasts, they're for all gender. So they're not just for women to try and work out what to do, but there are many that will talk to supportive strategies of what to do and how to do it. And in fact, LinkedIn Learning has a free course that you could do about what is menopause in the workplace. And that might just be a really nice place to start to understand it and think about, well, how could I lean in and how can I make my work environment such that people will feel more psychologically safe to raise their hand if they need support.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. That was very in depth and much more than I, knew before, which is amazing, right? And that's what this is all about, right? Here
Yeah.
is to get that awareness and going, yeah, how can I support? One angle that I look at with things, I don't know, I'd love to know your opinion, is like for general things, if I look at down the natural vitamin ways of doing things, right? So like,
Yeah.
for example, I used to get muscle cramps at a young age. Magnesium is very good for muscle
Yeah.
cramps. I thought
Yeah. Yeah.
magnesium and then they go away. So is there something for these menopausal women that's just a bit more natural? We're not talking about the hormone
Yeah.
stuff yet,
The-
that can help as well?
Yeah, there's all sorts of things that you can do. And so I always talk to women to say, well, what's your preference in terms of how you like to respond to different things that are happening to you? Some prefer general medicine, some like to use naturopaths, some like nutritionalists, some might like a combination. And I ask them to use their self-coaching skills to build up their confidence, to go and make their own inquiries and make the decision so they feel informed to know what's best for them, because it's unique to everybody. Everyone's journey is unique. And one woman who might be on HRT, hormone replacement treatment, might be very different to somebody else who's using magnesium and oils and other things. And there might be some in between using a combination. So making informed decisions, I think, is a really healthy way to be. Being curious, knowing that there's so many people around you who are going through their own journey. So starting just to open yourself to asking questions or being in conversation with others can be very helpful. And a really nice place to start, just start with your girlfriends and ask them, what are you doing? What's happening? You'll be surprised how many want to be in conversation. And even in the workplace, we've established menopause cafes where people can just come and have on an informal basis just a chat with like-minded folk. And anyone, even if you're not going through menopause, can drop in and hear more and learn more because your partner at home might be going through it, or your sister or your mum, and you might just want to better understand why has she been moody of late. And often it's to do with this fluctuation in hormones, which they hadn't anticipated. And so it might also help you be better in terms of talking to them and prompting them to think about the choices they can make and how much more educated they could get.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for that and that perspective too. Let's talk about your book now again quickly. I know you've mentioned it a
Oh,
little before. Be your own leadership coach. Self-coaching strategies to lead your way. So yeah, what can people expect? From this book of reading it and what it will impact
thank
their life?
you. Well, actually, today I just posted that it had won another international award, which I'm really excited about. So it's doing really well. It's won a series of awards. It's been published in Australia by Major Street Publishing, and also it was picked up by Pan Macmillan India and published over in India as well. So I did a book launch in India for 2 weeks last year, which was hugely exciting. I'd never been to India before. What you can expect is an understanding of what self-coaching is. It's an evidence-based book, so it's based on the field of positive psychology. It's come from through my lens, which is through professional services and executive coaching. And each chapter will bring to you stories, which will be very relatable to many leaders. It will give you a little bit of theory. It will take you through some self-coaching exercises so you can build your skills, and it will give you a self-coaching summary. And all of these are intended to go into what I call your virtual backpack. So each day when you leave home, you might pick up your phone, you'll pick up your keys, and you can strap on this virtual backpack and adjust the straps, and your hands are free to deal with any challenge that comes your way. And as the day goes, you can pull out the self-coaching strategy that will be in support of you. And if that one doesn't work, you lift that one away and you pull out another. So it's really to arm you so you feel so much more confident and responsive and capable to lean into the challenges you have through building your own. And also, it's not intended to be every possible self-coaching strategy. It's to start you off. So I do offer additional resources and strategies on my website that people might want access to once they've gone through this, if they want to build it up. There's a free e-journal that people might find useful also to start reflecting and thinking about different things, what's in their control, what are the things that are helping them, who do they want to be that day, those kind of things, who do they want to give feedback to, a number of processes. But it seems to be doing well. I've had some lovely responses to it, which I'm very excited and proud of.
Yeah, amazing. Well, congratulations again on that, and sounds
Thank
like an
you.
amazing book. And I'm sure we continue to make an impact for people there. And you've shared so much wisdom with us today. It's been amazing. And I guess as we're starting to wrap up here today, what one key piece of advice would you like to give to all the entrepreneurs watching and listening today?
Well, I think for entrepreneurs, being conscious of the fact that sometimes you're in a small business, you're on your own or you're with others, and I think where you can start to build out your sense of community with others. And the more that you have of community, the greater your capability to bounce ideas. I've certainly found that in my journey is building myself into a couple of probably about three different communities. I found great support in learning more about being a business owner, in understanding that my worries are very much similar to what others are experiencing. But by hearing their stories, I've been able to solve for things much faster. And so rather than feeling that you're alone and you've got to go it alone, I'd start thinking about what are the communities that you could become a part of, whether they're coaching communities or maybe it's industry communities or business communities, and how do you participate in those? And how do you bring your voice into it? Rather than just sit there listening, how do you actually start to build your sense of connection with others by also sharing your experience?
Yeah, love that. Completely agree. Really important to get around like-minded people, and go on that journey of growth together. And we connected through our networks. I learned about your awesome
We
journey from
did.
24 years as a partner at Deloitte, which is massive, as well as now being an executive coach and keynote speaker. You're an amazing woman, so knowledgeable. You shared so much with us today about self-coaching and motivation, menopause, and all the rest of it. And I'm sure you continue to help leaders to developing self-coaching practices to enhance their leadership impact. And very grateful that we connected. Look forward to connecting further with you. So, Karen, how can people find you, get in contact with you?
Probably two places are the easiest. My website is called karensteincoaching.com. And well, actually, there's three places. Then there's CUPPA, CUPPA, has a platform, a bureau, which will talk about the different services I can also provide. And lastly, on LinkedIn, you can find me Karen Steyn on LinkedIn.
Yeah, beautiful. Awesome. We'll definitely check out Karen there on the website, on Kappa, and on LinkedIn as well to connect directly. Check out her book. It sounds amazing with all the awards and everything else, and the other book that's going to be in the process of being written now as well. It's been a pleasure interviewing you, and thanks for being on the Business Growth Show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening to this show where we talk about everything on business growth. And please like, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as Athin Cassiotis, or visit my website, athincassiotis.com. If you want to grow and scale your business, you can reach out to me on any platform to see if we're a good fit. I completely agree with you, or do I? The only way you know is if you tune in next time. So until next time, remember that our business grows when we learn skills and take action using them in spite of fear. So remember to design your growth and results.